it's Shangri. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about Units 5 and 6. The Enlightenment was a movement that took ideas from humanism, the Renaissance, and the scientific revolution that valued reason over faith. It led to political revolutions such as socialism, which is the idea that workers own their means of productions, feminism, which was fighting for women's rights, capitalism, where the means of production are privately owned, and nationalism, taking pride in one's homeland. There were several big thinkers, such as John Locke, with his idea of natural rights and the social contract, and Hobbes, who believed in giving some rights to the government. These ideas led to the abolition of slavery because of the idea that everyone has natural rights, including those who were in slavery. In addition, after many centuries of anti-Semitism, the Jewish people achieved the setup to eventually create their own homeland called Israel in 1948. For feminism, movements arose fighting for women's suffrage, rights, and equality. This led to the Declaration of the Rights of Women and the Female Citizen, which highlighted the unequal rights that men were given after the French Revolution.
Furthermore, the Haitian Revolution was a slave revolt that occurred in 1971 to 1804. One of the major leaders of this revolution, Toussaint Louverture, freed the African Americans from slavery and split up the land for all. Lastly, Latin America was home to the Creole revolutions. The Creoles were the people born in America, but from European descent, who fought for independence from European rule. Through expensive battles, they eventually gained independence with new constitutions and governments, Creoles as a leader and women gaining little rights. Because of the growth of maritime trade, accumulation of capital, and the Columbian Exchange, the Industrial Revolution occurred. The first nation to industrialize was Great Britain because they were isolated and weren't as prone to conquering, had natural resources such as coal and other materials from their colonies, and the location near the water helped lead to hydropower. The Industrial Revolution led to development of new technologies such as the spinning jenny, the idea of interchangeable parts, the steam engine, and the assembly line. The idea of interchangeable parts and the assembly line both helped contribute to the faster development of products.
Unit 5 also covered all of the Atlantic revolutions. Due to the new Enlightenment ideas that clashed with traditional ideas, revolutions bloomed around the world. They came with ideas of progress, natural law, and nationalism. In America, there was the American Revolution. The colonists in America fought for independence from their British rulers, looking to start their own free market economy. The outcome of this revolution was American independence and also the Declaration of Independence, inspired by John Locke. Also, this revolution helped pave the way for future revolutions. In addition, the French Revolution was a battle of the poor against the rich monarchs. Because of their unequal wealth and also their representation in their States General, this revolution led to the French Republic, where the Reign of Terror occurred, with thousands of oppressors killed. This lasted until Napoleon took over the French government in 1804.
All of this spread throughout Eurasia to France, Japan, Russia, and the US. All of this increased production caused a rise in the need for energy sources. With this came the coal revolution, which was a switch to coal power, allowing water transportation and increased iron production. The second industrial revolution spread during the 18th and 19th centuries. It contained the development of oil as a resource, better communication, such as the telephone and radio, and increased steel production. Along with the second wave came a mass migration of people to urban areas, causing overcrowding, tenement homes, and unsanitary conditions. In Japan, explorations and study took place in Europe in order to learn about European culture. In contrast, both China and the Ottoman Empire did their best to avoid the effects of the Industrial Revolution, fearing it would overcome their culture. As for the economy, the ideas of capitalism, transnational corporations, and consumerism helped the economy grow during this time. Lastly, all of this caused a rise in labor unions, the fight for voting rights, and the cleansing movements of many different cultures, such as the self-strengthening movement taking place in China.
Imperialism was greatly affected by the economy. First, trading post empires were established, then companies moved to India for the wealth of the spice trade. In India, Britain controlled cotton, silk, and spice trade through the British East India Company. The Dutch used the Dutch East India Company in South Africa. Industrialization greatly sped up this process. From this rivalry, colonization grew in Africa, often called the Scramble for Africa. Western powers divided Africa for their personal economic gain. Borders were decided at the Berlin Conference, which included all Western powers except for Africa. African colonies were often abused by European powers that controlled them. Today we are going to focus on the Congo Republic. What was that, Stan? It wasn't actually a republic? Okay, today we're going to be focusing on the Congo. King Leopold II of Belgium controlled Congo. He greatly abused his power and used the natives as slaves to get raw materials. They harvested great quantities of rubber from forests and rubber trees, despite having very dangerous conditions. Many died and fell and injured themselves during these conditions. If they didn't meet their weekly requirement, the Belgians would sometimes chop off their hands. 8 million Congo people died under the control of King Leopold. Not so fun fact, King Leopold never stepped foot in Congo.
Another important aspect of this time period was overseas expansion, which was basically the bigger country taking lands from the smaller countries. For example, the Mexican-American War, lasting from 1846 to 1848, involved the US taking Texas from Mexico. Things weren't great either in the rest of the world. In India, Britain was in complete control. They mobilized the sepoys, the Indian soldiers serving under the British, in order to grow their military power. They greased the bullet cartridges with animal fat, which was greatly offensive to the Muslim and Hindu soldiers' religions. In Europe, industrialization was booming. As their technology became more and more advanced, they spread their inventions to their colonies. Things such as railroads and steamships became somewhat more common in African colonies. The Western powers used their colonies for raw materials such as cotton and rubber, thus creating an economic cycle. The colonies exported materials to Europe, and Europe turned them into goods and sold them right back to the colonies. Another big change was found in the colonies' agriculture. They transitioned from producing enough for their own supply to producing cash crops like coffee and sugar. In China, they were struggling with the Opium Wars. This series of conflicts began when Great Britain wanted to use China to their economical advantage, and saw opium as a way to do that. Opium is a highly addictive drug, and a large portion of China became quickly addicted. Opium was outlawed, sales didn't stop. The black market flourished. From 1839 to 1842, British forces fought a war in China that benefited the drug smugglers. The war ended on the 17th of August, 1842, with the Treaty of Nanking enabling the British to freely trade with China. Another part of this modernization was the increased urbanization. There was a great migration of labor workers. Indians went to Britain, Chinese went to work on railroads, and Japan was sent to Hawaii. While slavery was abolished, some similar practices continued on throughout the 20th century. Instead of slavery, it was called indentured servitude. People would be in contracts for a set number of years and then earn their freedom. This was a very significant time period in history, as it marked the beginning of tons of progress. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Crash Course is produced and directed by Nicholas Mustard. Our script supervisor is Bailey Koenig. Our associate producer is Mia Benner. The show was written by Raylan Cerny and Kennedy Cummings. And our graphics team is Vern Caruso.